brought to you by NSK Information Technology in Boston. NSK makes IT work. And by McHugh Well Drilling in Pembroke, Massachusetts, serving individual and business well, pump, and test boring needs since 1952. And now, we present your host, Mr. Robert Kopper.
Hello, this is Robert Kopper, and this is the Robert Kopper Show. We are here for part 3 with Rob Roy, Second World War torpedo bomber pilot. Now we're up to the point where Rob receives his commission. He's graduated from a flight school. He receives his commission and is headed off to the Second World War. They give you a choice of planes that you could fly. Now, tell me something about that.
The demand was such that after the war started, the Department of Defense set up a plant in New Jersey called Eastern Aircraft that was operated by General Motors Corporation, and they made the Grumman Avengers. And you could tell which one you were flying because the nomenclature on the plane was TBF. It was made by Grumman, and TBM for Eastern Aircraft.
And you said it was a slow aircraft, kind of like a truck, but very effective.
It cruised at about 165 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm. Would it carry one torpedo or multiple?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but a torpedo weighed a ton, 2,000 pounds, and it was 15, 16 feet long, so it was a big object.
How many planes in the squadron?
We had 27. Normally a daytime torpedo squadron would have 18 planes. So we had 27 because we had no dive bomber group with us. We just had night fighters and night torpedo bombers. We flew probably the same number of daily flights.
You said that the night crew was different than the day crew.
TBF, you have the pilot, you have a radio man who rides in the back, and a gunner who rides in that turret. Turned out the turret weighs about 2,000 pounds, and they figured that there wouldn't be anything for them to shoot at in pitch dark. So they took the 2,000-ton turret out and put in radar gear and substituted a radar man. Normally he would have been a gunner. These were my two crewmen.
Yeah, that's a great picture. That was your first crew when you went out?
Yes. This is John Albert. He was my radio man, and this was John Deal, a radar man. And they flew with me.
So you had two.
They had no choice; they had to go.
Was one a navigator?
I taught the radio man navigation because he really didn't have anything to do. But, but I ended up doing my own navigation.
Yeah. This is interesting because it shows the torpedo bomber teamwork. The radio man goes through boot camp, radio school, air gunner school, operational training unit, and the pilot goes through pre-flight school, primary training, intermediate training, operational training unit. The gunner goes through boot camp, air gunner school, operational training unit, and fleet school. So that's the team. Here's a letter to your mother. Could you read that for us?
I'll read it. It's dated March 44. Dear Mother, I received the alumni news you forwarded, and I note that I have been selected for a torpedo bomber's pilot. We have finally finished our familiarization stage flying. The last 2 hops were high altitude flights. We got up to 18,000 feet. I would have enjoyed the hop more if we hadn't had to wear oxygen masks. I have my 2 crewmen now, and we've been flying together for about a week. They are good boys, but they are very young. I later found out one of them was older than I was. Neither of them had been up in an airplane before. I've taken them out on a couple of gunnery hops, and they are very good marksmen. Yesterday we made glide bombing and anti-submarine runs, and my crew was the only one that had all the switches set up correctly to drop the right number of bombs. Today we are making individual torpedo runs on a fishing pier at the beach. We drop a concrete block on these first practice runs Later, we dropped live torpedoes at a Navy patrol boat. The torpedoes are set to run at a depth below the ship. These planes seem to get smaller every day, but they still weigh 8 tons. I haven't closed $50. We were paid on the 15th, and I've been holding on to see if I'll need it. I've paid my mess bill, and I think we'll be paid Saturday. I've paid for my uniforms also. They were $206. I've enclosed the picture I wrote to Connie about. Those kids were very cute. She had some, Connie is my sister. She had some pictures taken downtown, and I'll send them along when they are ready. Tom Roach, the boy that I came home with from Olathe, Kansas, just arrived here. He had to wait for his orders to be reviewed. He was home on leave for a while, I think. We were assigned to work at the A&R shop this morning. We helped to give one of the engines its 60-hour check. I think we learn a lot that way, and the mechanics don't seem to mind explaining things to us. Fred's pilot had some ear trouble and will be there until May, and Fred thinks he might get down here. Over
Now, what is this?
This is a page out of my logbook. Every flight is listed. This is the date of the flight, the airplane they flew, and the specific serial number of the plane, and how long the flight was, and what kind of a flight it was.
Almost every flight was a different plane.
Yes.
It looks like.
Yes.
And
we weren't assigned a specific.
Yeah. And this is operational training, flight completion report. This is your report card.
This was when we were up at Great Lakes.
Oh, okay.
Glenview. They sent us up there to learn to land.
So this is February of 44. You have familiarization, formation, navigation, fleet and free gunnery, anti-submarine bombing, glide bombing, torpedo runs, low-level bombing, night flying. You must have done well in that. You should read these remarks because I think they're all good. This is
Lanston Roy's officer-like qualities and flying ability both are affected closely and in the same way by his youth. I was 19, I think, at the time. He seems tense and bewildered and often tries so hard that he becomes confused and makes headwork mistakes, which with his intelligence and education seems surprising. His attitude is very good, and the latter part of the syllabus showed some improvement as he became more accustomed to the plane and became more at ease. For a long time he was dangerous, particularly in formation work, and was only retained because of his youth, with the hope that some improvement would show, which it did. This improvement began very late, and since he has been once given the extreme benefit of the doubt, he should be watched closely to see that it continues. I think this was just before they dumped me.
right. Who signed this? Who signed it? Flight instructor.
A man named Huddleston, a lieutenant commander.
Here's another letter, May 1944. Would you like to read this one? This one seems a little bit short.
Honored. Dear Mother, I didn't realize until you called that I had not written for such a long time. We have been worked very hard these past few weeks. We flew until about midnight almost every night, and we practiced field carrier landings during the day. If I sounded strange on the phone, it was because I was worrying about checking out on field carrier landings. I finally qualified Sunday, and our squadron is leaving tomorrow night for Chicago. I have enclosed a copy of my orders. After I qualify on a ship at Chicago, I have 15 days leave and then report to San Diego. If things work out normally, I should be in Chicago for 1 week. Field carrier landings were very nerve-wracking ordeals at first, but now I enjoy it. Our squadron had no major accidents until we commenced field carrier landing practice. Then one boy spun in and demolished a plane. 2 boys nosed up, 2 boys blew out tires, and I ground looped and scraped the wingtip. Chuck Strower, my roommate, blew out 1 tire and swerved off into the sand and nosed up. The 10 of us are all well, despite all of this. I am sending my cruise box on a CPAC home with most of my stuff. I'm sending home $50. I am keeping some extra in case I don't get paid until I get home. Love to all, Rob.
So all that flight training was in a field
Yes.
before you hit the
Yeah, before they sent us out to a ship to land, they put a signal officer out at the end of the runway, and we all pretended that was a ship, and we obeyed his instructions and came in and pretended we were landing on a carrier. And when we got proficient at that, they let us go out and do it on a real ship.
Yeah, that would make sense to do it that way.
Yes. Yes, because they had only so many carriers, and if we put them all out of service by crashing into them,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have been productive. You will report to your new station not later than 2400 on 18 May. This is at Glenview Naval Air Station, and they sent all of us as a group up to qualify as naval aviators.
Mm-hmm.
This is that group that got sent to do
Okay.
carrier landing simultaneously.
Are these fellows on the bottom row pilots?
No, they're gunners and radio men and the pilots.
Oh,
on the
okay,
back row.
yeah. This insane-looking ship is a Wolverine, a primitive training carrier employed in the Great Lakes during World War II. Cut down from a sidewheel excursion steamer, she was meant as a cheap, no-frills training platform to boost the number of pilots joining the fleet. These ships had no hangars, no fueling facilities. The aircraft being flown out for landings, takeoffs, and touch and goes each day.
They were funny old ships. I wrote that in May 1944 I made my first 8 carrier landings on the USS SABLE. The SABLE and another carrier, the Wolverine, were docked just north of Chicago, and every morning they would head out into Lake Michigan. We had a clothesline.
Yeah.
On the TBF, you push a button and the landing hook put down. On these trainer planes, we took this clothesline off the armrest, and that let it drop down.
Oh,
And we could hook the wires on the carrier.
inside the plane, you were letting the pulling
Yeah.
the clothesline. Oh.
Yeah, after we landed, they'd hold the hook up to the airplane and signal us, and we'd pull in the cord and hang it. Funny, it was funny.
Number 1, you fly the plane. We do not signal you and concentrate during the first few passes on getting lined up, getting in the groove. You'll find that you'll watch the signal officer alone, that you will not be able to line up. You must watch the platform marked on the field. That is what it's there for. You fly in and put the plane in the middle of the deck. That's pretty clear.
This is
Who are
the
these
squadron at San Diego, Torpedo Squadron 84.
Uh-huh. And where are you here?
This Callow youth.
Oh, yeah. You're the one I'm pointing to?
I think so. Yes. Now this ill-fated squadron went out of the USS Bunker Hill after I was sent to my punishment squadron, and half of them got killed sinking a Japanese battleship, the Yamato. The other half of them were sitting in the ready room when a kamikaze hit right in the ready room. So nobody survived that squadron. So even though I would have sold my soul to stay with them, God was looking out for me, I guess.
You're the sole survivor of this entire group. So this is June 1944, a letter to your mother.
Dear Mother, I arrived here okay and have been doing nothing until today. Francis Blossom, a swell guy who went to Yale for 3 years and was in our squadron at Fort Lauderdale, and I were assigned to Torpedo Squadron 84, a torpedo squadron that is forming here in the States. We were in San Diego at the time. This is a wonderful break for us because most of the other pilots have been in actual combat, and they are very nice to us, and we can learn a great deal from them. Our air group will consist of Corsair fighters, Helldiver dive bombers, and Avenger torpedo planes. And I believe we will be assigned to an Essex-class carrier when we go out. Our squadron leader, Lieutenant Commander Swanson, says we'll be here till about October, but we might move to different bases here on the coast from time to time. The boys in our Lauderdale group are all scattered now. Chuck and Bill Travis were sent to San Francisco. Several of the boys went to Seattle, and one or two were sent out to Pearl Harbor. The food and living quarters are excellent here, and I've been having it soft so far, but we'll really start flying in a day or so. Thus far, Blossom and I have been flying familiarization hops by ourselves to get used to the plane again and the area. All my mail must be sent to this address, BT 84 Fleet Post Office, San Francisco. Here we've got the crewmen and the pilots.
Oh, I see. Squadron 84?
84, yeah.
Which one is you?
I think I was just a kid then, so I'm not recognizable.
Your head is tilted in the opposite
Yeah, that's
direction.
right.
Now I see with this letter to your mother, the stationary changes, and it's got the official designation of Squadron 84, and this is July 1944. So could you read this?
Okay. Dear Mother, I flew today for the first time in over a week. I was flying on a battle practice hop with a cold, and I aggravated it enough to be grounded for a while. I'm okay now, and I flew a radar bombing hop this afternoon. Last Sunday, several of us were over at the Hotel Coronado for a tea dance. At the conclusion of the very last number, I was standing right next to Mary Lynn Pratt, the daughter of the CO at Fort Lauderdale. He is on a carrier now, and Mary Lynn is living here with her mother. She was with someone else at the dance, but I'm all set for my next day off. I received a nice letter from Aunt Grace, and I have written to thank her for the birthday package. I haven't received the one you relayed from Aunt Annie yet. I didn't tell you before, but I received my gearboxes okay. But I couldn't understand how the suitcase came Railway Express. If you send any letters, airmail, it is okay to use 6-cent stamps. I guess my only chance to see Uncle Conrad would be by ferrying a plane up that way. He was in San Francisco. I flew a plane to Los Alamitos at Los Angeles, but that's the farthest north I've been. Chuck Stroher is up in San Francisco at Alameda Naval Air Station, and he and I have been corresponding. The executive officer of his squadron is Lieutenant Carr, our flight instructor at Fort Lauderdale, small Navy. I was squadron duty officer yesterday and today. It's a 24-hour watch. We just have to be available during the night, during which we control the squadron work very hard and have all the responsibility for everything that happens. This watch is assigned to an officer of the squadron's day off as a disciplinary action. I had it last month once for the flat adding Uncle Conrad mentioned. I flew over the Agua Caliente racetrack in Mexico at a fairly low altitude. The main thing I did wrong was in flying in Mexico. I hadn't been told that before I took off, and for that reason I got off lightly. I haven't closed a war bond I purchased for a squadron's all-out effort. Oh, that's, we had a camera, gun camera, and for some reason I was taxiing at San Diego and it went off.
Oh, and that's the plane in front of you?
Yeah,
I can't.
another
Yeah,
plane.
it looks almost as though it's about to land, but the landing
No,
gear is not. No.
he's taxiing too. I didn't hit him.
No. So July 1944. Is anything interesting in this?
I don't remember.
Well, let's see.
Dear Mother, I've been working very hard since I joined the squadron, and I'm about caught up. Blossom and I have been flying extra hops, and now we have been assigned definite positions in the formation. I am also the assistant materiel officer for Torpedo Squadron 84, which requires extra time outside flying duties. We have been getting some new TBFs recently, and I was flying one last week and had a close call. I took off and was turning to circle the field, and my oil pressure dropped to 0. I just made it onto the field before the engine froze. A representative of Eastern Aircraft, parentheses General Motors, who also build TBFs, came up to see me and informed me that a checkup revealed a loose nut in the oil scavenger pump. It had caught in the 2 gears and jammed. Today our squadron was in on a battle practice north of San Diego. Troops were landed from freighters, and our entire air group and several others provided air support. We had to circle for about 2 hours until we were needed for a bombing attack. Then joined up and came back holding a close formation for 3 hours, which is very tiring. But we have the remainder of the day off until night flying at 10 o'clock tonight. I wrote to Uncle Conrad, but I haven't heard from him yet. Aunt Grace sent me a box of candy and cookies for my birthday, and I haven't had a chance to write. If you write, be sure to thank her for me. I finally was paid, and I have enclosed some money. The rest is in a check I haven't been able to cash. I have begun to pick up a cold, but I am going over and lie in the sand at the swimming pool, right next to our quarters. Hope you have a nice vacation at Rockport this summer. Please use the money to buy a birthday gift for Anne and Connie and yourself. And I wish you all a happy birthday. Love, Rob.
So that was another close call. You mentioned many close calls that you've been through, and I hadn't heard about that one. A loose nut almost took you down.
Yeah, the oil was pumped with 2 gears meshing, and this loose nut got caught in these 2 gears, which were stuck. And it happened after I landed, fortunately.
So it was running up until the time you landed. Wow. How much were you were paid weekly or monthly?
When we were cadets, we got like $50 a month or something.
Yeah.
But now we're commissioned officers, so we were probably up into the several hundreds a month.
But you were sending, it seems like every letter
Well,
you
they
sent.
didn't give us any opportunities or time off to spend it, so
You might as well send it home, yeah. Now we're up to August of 1944. We have 2 letters.
It's kind of sad. I had a pal at Mount Hermon School named John Roberts.
Which is here in Massachusetts.
Yes, out in western Massachusetts, Northfield.
Still there.
Yeah. Dear Mother, I received a letter that I had written to John Roberts when I first arrived here. The letter was unopened, simply stamped deceased. Seems hard to believe, and yet it must be true. John was the finest friend I've ever had, and we had swell times together at Mount Hermon. We used to have the same jobs, the same classes, and we went out for the same sports. This is an awful way to find out, stamped on an envelope. He was a paratrooper over in England, so I suppose he was killed in France. I wish there was some way I could find out definitely about this, but I wouldn't want to write to his folks now. One of the boys who was at Kilgore with me just checked in here and is rooming with me. He has been assigned to a squadron of PB-2Y Coronado flying boats. I received Connie's letter and will answer it soon. I'm glad you are all having a swell time at Rockport. I am getting brown as a nut. It never rains here and the sun is wonderful. That's it. San Diego. Swell was my only adjective. Everything was swell.
I think that was a word used a lot back then.
Yes.
It's like we use awesome.
But my English teacher at Harvard would not approve of me using swell.
I like swell better than awesome. Let's see, September of 1944.
Dear Mother, some sort of a miracle has occurred, and our entire squadron has been granted 10 days leave at different periods, commencing next week. My period is from October 14th to 24th. plan to fly to Boston, if possible, in a Navy transport plane or the airlines. Not only that, but we have been given permission to make long-distance cross-country flights in an 800-mile radius alone. My flight is on 22nd of September to San Francisco. I can stay overnight and leave Saturday afternoon. I just have written to Uncle Conrad to tell him I'm coming. The reason for this is, I suppose, because it is felt that we have sufficient training already and we won't be shipping out right away. Today we flew out to simulate an attack on a large carrier coming in from Pearl Harbor. The entire air group was in it, fighters, dive bombers, and of course torpedo planes. The carrier was about 150 miles out and it was a bad day, but we found it and gave it a beating. As far as I can see, the biggest danger in attacking a ship with a large number of planes is continued on page 2. Possibility of collision among the aircraft. Yeah, we were all coming in to the center point. And then nobody thought about what do we do when we all join up. I am looking forward to this flight next Friday. Originally we were to fly in sections of 3 planes, but flying alone is always much more interesting on a cross-country flight, and we will learn much more that way. Some of the boys are planning to fly to Oregon and Texas. Just one day. San Francisco is far enough. The leave dates I mentioned so far are tentative. We have not gone to the desert for our rocket training yet, and we have to take a 10-day cruise on a small carrier to practice landings. And I guess that will come after the leave. I hope so. I'll let you know. I have copies of our squadron picture, which I will mail if I get a chance.
You also, as well as torpedoes, you had rockets on these? Small rockets?
Yes, we had rails to take 8 rockets out of the wings.
On each wing?
We had a 50 caliber machine gun built into each wing that we could fire from the cockpit. It's quite a dangerous airplane. Our squadron had a horizontal hollow arrow.
Did you ever consider your own mortality?
No.
That fear must have been in the back of your mind.
When you're 18 and 19, you don't
think about
You don't
that.
worry about that. You're going to live forever. Who
Yeah.
cares? Yeah. I think that's why they take young kids, because if they asked me now to go do this, I'd say, are you out of your mind? Nobody in their right mind would do that.
Oh, here's a photograph. And I think we've looked at it, but for some reason this one's marked very well.
Yes.
Torpedo Squadron 84.
Yeah. I think everyone is deceased. This is the area when they gave the skipper orders to send his 3 finest pilots, so he got rid of Roy and Atkinson. And Big Red used to come in drunk and hungover and late every morning, and that was an anathema for an Annapolis graduate.
Yeah.
And McLaughlin used to tell the skipper he ran the squadron like a high school teacher. And Roy got in trouble buzzing the racetrack in Mexico. And everyone else didn't survive.
The 3 guys that got transferred out, their names were?
Robert Roy, I can't remember his real name, we called him Big Red Atkinson, and Little Joe McLaughlin. He was from Amherst.
Thank you for joining us for part 3 of Rob Roy's service to this nation during the Second World War as a torpedo bomber pilot. Thanks again. Thank you, Roy.
you.